So watch me bring the fire, set the night light. Shoes on, get up in the morning, cup of milk, let's rock and roll. Kick out, get the drum rolling on like a rolling stone. Sing song when I'm walking home, jump up to the top of the brown. Ding dong, call me on my phone, nice tea and I get my ping pong. This is heavy, can't hear the bass, boom, I'm ready. Life is sweet as honey, and this beat you like money. Days long, all alone, I'm into that, I'm good to go, I'm down, you know I'm going. Hey, let's go. Yes, I'm in the stars tonight, so we bring down fire, set the light. Shining through the city with a little fucking song. So wanna light it up, light dynamite. Whoa, bring a friend, join the crowd. Everyone come along. Word up, talk, just move where we the world. They're light, sky's the light, so we dance to the break of dawn. Ladies and gentlemen, I get the medicine, so you should keep your eyes on the ball. This is steady, heavy, can you hear the bass? Boom, I'm ready. Let me spit this honey, and this bitch chill like money. This song all alone, I'm into that, I'm good to go, I'm down, you know I go. And let's go. Yes, I'm in the stars tonight. So we bring the fire, set the night light. Shining through the city with a little fucking song. Light it up, light dynamite.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Animation 101. My name is Linda Sylvester, and I am your host. Please take a few moments to review the tab Virtual Creed. We show respect. We take care of our technology. We focus. We participate. We own the story, and we attend group. And now, please take a few moments to review the logistics for today's webinar. Note that we will be going over payment in just a moment. Make special note that the chat feature is disabled. You will be able to ask questions to our guests through the Q&A option. Check out the instructions in the chat. Before we launch into class, I want to invite Lori to share information about how you'll be paid for today's class.
Sorry, I was muted, wasn't I? So I'm here today to tell you about how you're going to be paid for today. You'll get $10 for the webinar, as Lyndon said. Your attendance was taken when you joined this webinar. So if you can see and hear us right now, your name has been recorded. Be sure that your Zoom name matches the name you registered with for this event. You'll receive a $10 prepaid gift card at the address you registered with, and you should get it by March 19th. If for some reason you don't get it by March 19th, please email us at tapincentives@theanimationproject.org. Email sent to this address though won't be checked until March 19th, and please make sure in any email that you put the name that you registered with in the email. So that's all for me. Back to Lyndon.
Thank you so much, Lori. Now I am happy to introduce today's co-facilitators, Brandon and Steph.
Thank you, Lyndon. Hi, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
Go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, okay. My name is Brandon. I'm the lead animator for today, as well as a rigging specialist.
And my name is Steph, and I'm the Community Relations Manager and a lead art therapist at TAP. And I will be leading us through our opening ritual today. It's great to be here. This is my second Animation 101, so I'm excited to be back. And we're going to open together. So this morning, we'll be focusing on the theme of community. And we want to know from you, what does community mean to you? Click the link in the chat to share 2 to 3 words that describe what community means to you. When you get to the link, you'll see our opening question and a space to type your response. What does community mean to you? Please be sure to click on the link in the chat now to enter your response, and we'll take a few minutes for everyone to think and respond. After you submit, return here to this Zoom and we'll watch our community's words come alive. Thank you, Meredith. You should all see the poll link in the chat. Community means togetherness, unity,
Community means love, to be happy.
friendship and home and comforting.
Community is support and kindness.
Community is acceptance, familiarity, happiness.
Companionship, working together.
Oh, they're getting so small, I can't see them. Community means working together, friendship, belonging, respect.
Community means to be safe, acceptance.
Safety, diverse, responsibility.
Oh man, there's so many.
These are all of your words, everyone, coming together. All 261 of you are working together to create this beautiful word cloud of community. So much so that the words are getting smaller and harder to read. I see teamwork.
I see cooperation.
And hard work.
Resources and positivity.
Amazing. We'll take one more minute to enter your words for community. Let's take a moment now to look at our word cloud. This did not exist a few moments ago, and we created this together. Awesome. Thank you all for sharing your words of community. And now I will pass it over to Brandon.
Cool. So I will be going over today's goals. So number 1, you will know what TAP is and all the ways you can get involved. 2, you'll be able to identify occupations in the animation industry. 3, you will know what creative arts therapy is and how it fits into TAP. 4, we will create something together. And 5, you will walk away with a toolbox of resources.
All right. So, what is TAP? Well, TAP is a therapeutic workforce development program. Why animation? Well, you could actually land one of these jobs as as an animator. And New York City is committed to creating 10,000 animation jobs by 2024. That's a lot of jobs. And we have a quote here from Deputy Mayor Alicia Glenn. We're the most creative city in the world, making sure our young people have access to 21st century animation tools that help build bright futures for our next generation of artists and keeps our city the global capital of culture. Now we have our levels of programming. So, TAP has a series of programs to support you in learning animation and telling your stories. You're in Animation 101 now, which is your introduction to TAP. We create animations about each borough in our borough storytelling series. And we have an intensive internship program to learn the software to make an animation. More information about how to join each of these levels of programming in the end of today's session. Now back to Steph.
Thanks, Lyndon. So something that we do in all of our groups is we create together. So we're going to be doing that here with almost 300 of us. And yes, it is possible. So we're going to tell the story of a community. So you'll see soon a series of poll questions pop up on your screen, and please choose what you would like our story to include. We'll use the most popular responses to create the story, and Brandon will show you an image of the story that we all created together. So you'll see in the poll, you choose between 3 different community members, kinds of community members. You have neighbors, inventors, explorers. For the environment, you can choose from a mythical forest, a big city, or space. I see all the votes are coming in already. For the obstacle that the community is facing in our story, you can choose from they must defend their homeland, find a rare missing magical stolen object, or defeat a villain. And the last question, the last choice is community strength that this community shares to overcome their obstacles. They can have brute strength, intelligence, or courage and bravery. So make your selections now in the poll. We'll take a few more moments. Okay, I'm going to count down from 10 to make your selections. We have them all coming in. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Get them in. 2, and 1. Okay, it looks like we have a community of neighbors living in a big city. These were close, almost ties. Neighbors living in the big city, their obstacles are that they must find a rare, missing, magical, and stolen object. And to overcome the obstacles in order to find that object, they use their intelligence. Amazing. So while Brandon is getting together the images for your story, this is going to be an image that reflects all of your choices. So you can think of it as the opening scene, or maybe the movie poster for this story. This image is getting ready right now. And in just a matter of moments, just like our opening ritual, you were all able to start a story together. And once we see this image, it'll bring it to life a little bit more. And you can kind of play with it and have fun and by thinking, what might happen next? What might this story be called? Here it is. So we have our group of neighbors in the big city, and they're going to use their intelligence to get that object. It looks like it's a sort of a magical wand that they have to reach to get to. So think about, how might they use their intelligence to get this object? What might they do together as a community to work together to obtain that object with their smarts? Amazing. Thank you so much for participating. And this story is now yours. It didn't exist before and now it does. So that's awesome. All right. Now I'm going to pass it to Brandon to share how the animation industry takes a story like this, the beginnings of a story idea, and turns it into an animation.
Hey everybody. So I'm going to touch on the animation pipeline. So the animation pipeline is essentially the steps involved in creating an animated film. It's similar to like an assembly line, but for 3D animated video production. It serves its purpose by helping a production team stay on schedule and ensure that all team members have what they need to make the best film possible. So to start off in the production pipeline, we have what we just did. We have the basis for our story. This group of neighbors living in a big city out to recover a missing or stolen artifact. So that's our idea. From there, we move into our story, where members of the team pitch ideas for various scenes that'll move the story forward. And they are critiqued by other members of the team as to polish the film to be very cohesive. After the story section, we move into storyboard, and that's when our ideas get put on paper. We see very rough drawings, kind of like a comic book, of what our film is going to look like. So we can have scenes of various members of our neighbor community working together to find this item. And once it's all strung together, we have the animatic. The animatic is, like I said, just a series of storyboard images laid next to each other to get an idea of what the film is going to look like. Kind of like a flip book. From there, once our animation is fully fleshed out in the animatic, we start to work on the design of the characters, as well as the environment and anything else that's going to go in the film. So that would be like the architecture of the city that we live in, the clothing that any of the characters wear, and things like that. From there, we go into layout, which is just a very quick and easy placement of objects in the 3D space. So for a big building, we would just have a large cube, and that would signify that where we're going to place our building asset and things like that. And also rough placement of where we're going to put our characters. R&D is research and development, and that's pretty much just a part of the pipeline where we focus on any complex animation tools that we may need to look into, such as creating sand, creating special effects like fire and things like that, how it's going to interact with our film. Next, we have modeling. So modeling is when we start to work on our 3D assets. We'll create our neighbor characters, we'll create our neighborhood, or the big city, and the magic item that they're looking for. Texturing is the process of adding color to all of those assets that we've just made. And rigging. Rigging is essentially puppet making. We take our characters, the shape of the body, and we put bones into it so that later on in animation, the animator can move the characters to create lifelike movement. Next, we have VFX. VFX is the part of the 3D pipeline where things such as like fire and smoke, explosions, sand, snow, all of that gets put into the 3D space, and we try to make it look as realistic as possible. Next, we have lighting and rendering. Lighting is just the process of creating a 3D light setup similar to real world lighting that would help make our scene look more believable. And rendering is the process of saving out the images produced from our 3D film and making sure that there's no errors in the 3D space, nothing is glitching through itself, things like that. With that, we enter post-production. Post-production, we start off with compositing. Compositing is when we take all those rendered images that we've put together of our film and we essentially beautify it. We make sure that we set the tone so that it's nice and evenly. The tone doesn't shift throughout the film unless we want it to shift, like such as the lighting. And we make sure that, again, there's characters are placed in the 3D space where we want to be. So if a foot is missing, we make sure that foot gets put in there, and things like that. After compositing, we move into 2D VFX and motion graphics. So that would be adding any title sequences, any special effects, comic whams, blams, anything that would go into the film. Color correction, I kind of touched on already. Color correction is making sure that every image in the film has a nice and consistent color. So the sky, if it's blue, remains blue for the majority of the film, unless it's nighttime or if it's a sunset, things like that. And with that, we reach our final output. So now I'm going to touch on occupations within the pipeline. So for pre-production, jobs include being a storyboard artist, a concept artist, screenwriter, and a character designer. For production, we have layout artists, modelers, which include character modelers and environment artists. We have texture artists, which include surface texture artists and matte painters. For rigging, we have motion capture artists and character TDs, as well as cloth and sim artists. For animators, we have technical animators, creature animators, and character animators. We have lighting artists, VFX artists, and render wranglers. For post-production, jobs include, for compositing, we have being a colorist, a rotoscope artist, a comp artist, and a motion graphics artist. And then some other jobs that don't quite fit into the pre-production, production, post-production include sound mostly. So being a compositor, being a Foley artist, or a voice actor, all of those go into the process of making a film.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I hope that Brandon's words opened a little bit more up for you in the terms of the field of animation, and we hope that you can envision yourself in one of those roles, and maybe it's something sparked for you, and you might want to learn more. So that was great, thank you. And now we're going to talk a little bit about creative arts therapy and what that is, if you don't know, if you've never heard of it, or if you're curious to learn more, and also how that fits into what we do at TAP. So creative arts therapy is a healthcare profession that uses creative expression in art making to improve and enhance the psychological and social well-being of people of all ages and all walks of life. because sometimes it's difficult to find the words that to express how you're feeling or what you're going through or what your story is. So sharing through creative expression can be healing in so many ways because it can help connect the mind, the body, and the spirit, because it is all connected. So at TAP, creative arts therapists work alongside professional animators. We are a team, just like today, you know, Brandon and myself and Lyndon, we are a team that help create a safe and productive space for participants to tell their stories and be part of a supportive community. So creative arts therapists are artists themselves. Sometimes they're working artists in the, you know, in the field of whatever their profession is, whether it's dance, drama, traditional art, photography, music. These are all the kinds of different creative arts therapies that professionals work in. So we have experience in those fields as well. So we are able to collaborate with the animators and participants to build meaningful stories, to get your stories out there into the world and to have your voices be heard. Because now, especially now, you know, the experience that we're all going through right now, being at home a lot, it's vital to create these spaces where you're able to share your voice, share your story, and express yourself. So that's what we do at TAP.
Thank you so much, Steph and Brandon, for that amazing information. All right, everyone, it's time to transition to our main event, our guest speaker, Jimmy San. I'm going to pass the mic to Kat, our moderator.
Thank you very, very much, Lyndon. It's such a pleasure to be here. And Brandon and Steph, really appreciate your introductions to that of the animation pipeline and creative arts therapy. So without further ado, it's very much my pleasure to introduce you all to the wonderful Jimmy San. I've had the pleasure of having known Jimmy for several years now. How many years has it been, Jimmy?
I think it's like probably 10 years now. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that.
Yeah, probably. I think we met maybe a year after I was out of school and you were still scheduling bookings for the mill. Yep. So it's probably been 10 years.
That's absolutely true. Wow. Gosh, time flies, certainly. Well, Jimmy is a talented lighting lead at Frame Store New York. And I'd love for you to sort of start off by sharing a little bit about your story and how you got into the industry.
Yeah, so I went to school for animation and VFX. I unfortunately graduated at a time when the market wasn't so good, but there were opportunities in New York at smaller studios that I wasn't aware of, but I took those chances, moved up here for an internship that would lead to a job, and that job led to me meeting Kat at the mill and opened up more doors down the line. And yeah, I'm still here, still doing what I've been doing this entire time.
Yeah. Wanted to get a sense from your end, you know, as a lead lighter, what does that look like, or how does that sit within, you know, obviously Brandon's wonderful introduction to the CG pipeline? Like, how does your role sit within that pipeline, and what does your day-to-day look like?
Depending on the scale of the project, but generally, with being a lead artist of any sorts on a project, it means that you are part of, like, I guess the look, or setting the look, and carrying that look throughout the show and keeping that consistency. Whether it's a particular design, a particular color palette, or just in general, like, yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And if you don't mind, I'd love for you, you've sort of indicated that you might have some work to share with our wonderful participants who are here with us in the space today.
Yeah, I'm generally not one to like show off stuff, but I guess for this purposes, I can share you my latest reel.
Thank you for that. And yes, for everyone who knows Jimmy, he's quite modest, I must say.
That's very kind of you, Kat. I always like to describe Kat as like the Keanu Reeves of the VFX industry, because everyone that meets Kat is like, oh my God, she's so lovely and she's so nice.
Thank you, Jimmy. I really appreciate that.
Um,
Oh,
so
dear.
just my latest reel. This is something that was cut in 2020. It's a combination of both commercials and streaming content, or episode, what we like to call episodic work.
Sounds great. We look forward to it.
I know that I can give a little bit. I got a little bit left. I know that I can give a little bit. Starting all over again. I feel my heart beat quick again. Anachronistic, the young mystic. He's prowling around in the night. Until a shadow, wherever we go, whatever I need to survive. We go down to the deep end, right back into place. I can breathe again. We go down to the deep end, right back into place from where we were. We never gonna come back from where we were. We're never gonna come
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. There are a lot of really incredible projects that you've worked on, both on the commercial front, episodic as well. There are quite some familiar projects as well. Wanted to get a sense from your perspective, like what's your favorite project that you've shared with us on your reel, and why?
I always tell people this when they ask me these questions, like, "Oh, what's the most favorite thing you've worked on?" And to be honest with you, I've always enjoyed everything I've worked on because I like the challenges that each project brings, and I try to take the results of that as the consequences or the beneficiaries of that project. So every project brings something new, and every project allows me to learn something new about CG and VFX. So don't really have a favorite.
Thank you for sharing. Adeep, one of our wonderful participants, is wondering, why did you specifically choose lighting within the CG pipeline?
Lighting feels like I have a more illustration, like I had an illustration and photography background growing up. CG was something I got into in college. And it was something that kind of clicked naturally to me, like painting textures, understanding how light works in a digital platform. And so it's just something that clicked better. Plus, like, if you ask anyone for me to animate, it just never looked good and it just never mended well. So lighting was something that was like my calling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Destiny is also wondering, what sort of steps did you have to take to become a part of the industry? You obviously referenced that you did go to school for animation and VFX, but how did you break into the industry?
Just constantly trying. There's no secret to it. Obviously, if you have classmates or friends who are currently working at a place, it's easier to get your foot in the door. In my case, it was just looking at any possible studio opening there was, whether it was a smaller name studio or a bigger name studio. At the time, for me, it was more important that I get my feet in somewhere and get the experience in somewhere, and before pursuing, bigger steps.
Right. Orchid's wondering, has animating VFX altered how you perceive life? How has it affected the way that you? This is quite a deep question, Orchid. Has it affected the way you understand physics in the world and how you translate that artistically?
Can you repeat that question again?
Yes. Has working in VFX altered how you perceive life?
Um, no, I will say that I do take enjoyment out of films that are more, I would say, cinematic, or I do take more appreciation from the narrative versus the visual, just because when you're working in it, you're just so bombarded with the visuals that it gets a bit, I guess, mind numbing. I don't know how to put it. Like I enjoy the casual superhero movie, but I would prefer something that's well written and well directed. And yeah, I just enjoyed. I appreciate real, like, good, true art more versus curated digital art for the masses.
Yeah, I understand that, and I relate to that myself. Um, so I'm getting all these wonderful, wonderful questions from our lovely participants, and I'm quite conscious that I want to be able to address as many of them as possible throughout this space. Um, so Naomi's wondering that she's currently in school for 3D animation, and she wanted to ask what the experience was for you in school, since you do seem to be focusing on lighting a lot. So she just would love to hear about the program that you had, what your school experience looked like.
The program I had was definitely, I would say, pretty tech heavy, which is I'm not that strong with. We were required to take a lot of like scripting programs and classes and whatnot. I did them. I'm not the biggest fan, still not the biggest fan, but it was great in the sense that you had other people who were very dedicated to also do lighting or compositing or texturing, and you can kind of collaborate with them. Or if you wanted to collaborate on a project together, you could collaborate with someone who wanted to focus more on animation. So like one of my thesis involved someone doing the animation of a short, and I did the lighting and texturing for his characters and environment and all that.
Mm-hmm. Similarly, and in the same vein, there are the options, and I'd like to share with our participants to go to school for animation and for learning visual effects, but you can also achieve, opportunities from other routes as well. So with that in mind, Maya's wondering that, she has no prior experience within the animation industry, but she's interested. So she's wondering, what are some thoughts and suggestions you might have in terms of how to get started?
If she's, I would say download Blender and look up Blender tutorials on YouTube. It's Blender's a free software. It's made splashes again in the industry with a bunch of updates. From what I've been told, it's super user friendly. There's plenty of tutorials to learn a lot of basics from, but also like take the time to, and I always reiterate this to even myself and other people in the industry, also take the time to like read a book about animation, like traditional animation, read a book on photography, read a book on composition and design, because fundamentally those all become your golden standards for what makes a good image.
Thank you for sharing that. And Blender is free.
Yep.
So that's also a really great reference. I really appreciate you sharing that, Jimmy. Hugo's wondering, what programs do you use now as an artist?
I vary. I switch between Maya, Nuke, and Houdini. Sometimes Photoshop if I have to like do a paint up for a client or for an artist to kind of help guide the look that we're trying to do.
Gabriella is wondering, you spoke about texturing earlier. Did you also learn that in school? She doesn't. She says that she doesn't have a lot of prior experience, but she's quite interested in texturing.
Yes, I did learn that in school. Yeah, I learned to texture using Photoshop when there wasn't many texturing programs out there at the time. I don't know if kids do that these days. I know there's like new softwares available.
What are some, Lord Blackburn's asking, were there any challenges, or what are some challenges you might have experienced throughout your career?
Oh, challenges. I would say that that's a tough question. Some of the biggest challenges that I had were just either having a client that couldn't really settle in on a decision, so we were constantly always working around like basically a revolving door of getting approvals, or being in scenarios where I was asked to do more than what I was comfortable with, and ended up taking on other roles that needed to be done. But I always see those opportunities as ways to like learn and grow, and it's kind of like a good life lesson in the industry.
Right. I'd quite like to talk about, a healthy work-life balance, and I'm conscious that, and I've mentioned this to other artists with whom I've been chatting the past few weeks, that, we're obviously most of us are pretty much working within our own spaces and sort of sitting in and working within these spaces, as it were. I'm going to ask this question in a roundabout way, but what are some practices that you observe for a healthy work-life balance, and what does your day-to-day look like right now as it stands?
Some of my practices have been kind of we actually had a conversation about that at work with HR, just reminding people to still practice habits of work as if we're still going to the office. I try to be super communicative towards my team or my supervisors, and try to satisfy their needs, but also make sure that I work into the client hours that I should be working to. But yeah, general practices. Sometimes if I have, like recently, we've had meetings at 11 a.m. We'll do our dailies at 11 a.m. The meeting will last for 30 minutes. As soon as that 30 minutes is done, I usually take a walk, grab a cup of coffee, just kind of collect my thoughts of what happened in the meeting, what needs to get done for the day, and then I get to it. And then generally I will check in at 5:30, just to like kind of flag it to my team and my supervisor and be like, hey, I'm leaving within the next 30 minutes. If you don't need anything from me in 30 minutes, then that's it. You can't reach me. And I turn off my chats and all that stuff. Obviously, obviously if the project is kind of intense and, and I'm required to be on a little longer, I'll do it. But I always try to make sure that people know where I'm at, or people know what I'm doing, just so that we're all kind of on the same boat, essentially.
Right. Yeah, communication and setting those boundaries. I think that's really great advice. Thank you. Carlos is wondering, how do you keep yourself motivated?
With work, I guess, or
let's say with work, or even externally.
With work, I always I always try to find new challenges within the project. If you told me 10 years ago that I would be, generating vegetation procedurally in Houdini, I probably would laugh at you. But it's stuff like that I'm doing now that maybe a project needs. I sometimes find myself that I get bored of lighting just because it becomes a task I'm familiar with. So I try to like push myself into different aspects of the pipeline just to learn about it. Currently in episodic, I'm shadowing the CG supervisor in episodic, just so I could basically have him kind of train me up with his tasks that like in his responsibilities day to day as a CG supervisor on the episodic side. So like when he's a bit bombarded with stuff, I'm like, hey, what do you need checking? What do we need to do? What's on your list? I'm a little light on my plate. And if it's something I'm unfamiliar with, it's great because I have someone who's like teaching me how he goes about things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always important to continuously learn and challenge oneself, even at the more senior level, because you're obviously a lighting lead or a CG lead. But with that in mind, I kind of want to get a sense from your perspective. What do you see as the next stage of your career? What would you like to be doing more of in the future?
For me, I feel like I'm currently spending about, I think 2/3 of my time in episodic. I quite enjoy the realm of television, mainly because it's like one of the things I've enjoyed throughout the industry is like there was a magazine called Effects Guide or something. I can't remember. They recently closed, but they used to do this monthly thing where it was called Invisible VFX, and it was VFX done in films that necessarily weren't. It wasn't like an Avengers movie. It was like just like an independent film where like someone made like, I don't know, a CG bat that no one noticed was a CG bat, but the VFX wasn't necessarily being driven, was an aspect that was driving the narrative of the film. It was just part of the film. And I would like to do more of that in television. Because of COVID and because people are realizing that virtual production is becoming more of a normal thing. I think being able to do stuff like doing a set extension that no one really knows is VFX would be kind of cool.
Right. No, I appreciate you sharing. Young is wondering, what's something that you wish you knew when you first started out? That's a great question.
Cameras and camera lenses. They are super important. Know your cameras and understand composition. That will solve 80% of your issues.
Jaden's wondering, based on your own perspective, what do you see as being more used? Do you see Blender being more used? Cinema? What are some softwares that you see that are more prevalent within the industry at this time?
I think Unreal will become a huge prominent factor in our industry. I'm growing to enjoy Houdini more and more. I spend probably 80% of my time in Houdini now, doing non-effects work. I think that software will continue to grow. But to be honest with you, I wouldn't really bank on software. If someone were to tell me that Substance Painter was going to be a thing, I would be like, what? So from a professor who like would chew me out about geeking out about software, I will lecture you this: don't rely on software too much. It's the artwork.
Yeah, that's true. Softwares are always evolving and continuously changing. So it's always important to keep current and to explore them and not be so software focused. Absolutely. Let's see what other thoughts and questions we might be asking you. Adding to this, I wanted to get a sense from your perspective. Are you at this point or throughout the past year, let's say, because time has passed quite exponentially, as we know, have you been working on any side projects or any fun, whether it's related to your career or not? I'm just curious to see what you've been up to.
Yeah, I started doing some stuff on the side. I don't really post any of it because I'm never really satisfied with my work. But the NFT industry is kind of been booming the last couple months with art being bidded in cryptocurrency. Yeah, just seeing that kind of surge in digital art. So I've been kind of doing stuff like that on the side and kind of just putting myself in like little challenges as of late. Like recently, I'm currently like just watching digital painting tutorials and learning how to concept art digital paintings in a compositional way, and just kind of putting myself in that scenario where I'm like, oh, I should get better at studying composition, what makes a good composition. And so like from time to time, I'll realize like I say like maybe like a weakness in my skill set, and try to study other avenues that's non-VFX to kind of, maybe have that contribute to my VFX side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. I have a more technical question for you now from Bianca. She's wondering if there are any quick tips and tricks for setting up lighting to make a render look a bit more polished. If you had anything you could perhaps abbreviate for us.
Yeah, if you just want to get something quick and dirty out the door, a nice HDR goes a long way. Yeah, or just like a quick Googling a quick 3-point three light scenario or 3-point lighting scenario works. There's like plenty now. It's so crazy that the internet is just like, there's just so much information.
Yeah, there's absolutely a lot that one can Google or YouTube these days. Absolutely. Annalie's wondering if you have ever had any unfortunate moments throughout your career or anything that you perhaps learned from in terms of how you've evolved as the talented artist that you are.
Oh, I wouldn't say I'm talented, but thank you.
You're very talented, Jimmy. I can definitely say that.
There are definitely some projects that definitely like were intense and definitely were moments of like if I'm gonna be honest, there were moments where I was like, oh, I don't know if like this industry is for me. And I wish I could lie to you and say that that will never happen to you, but I'm a terrible liar, and chances are something like that will happen to you. It's just the state of our industry, but you build camaraderie from those moments, and you learn, like you really, I would say like the artists who only work at the big studios where everything's organized and everything's like well buttoned up won't grow in the same way that the artists who work at some of those smaller cowboyish studios where you really learn to like think on your feet and really like get clever with your skill set and really, in my opinion, develop as an artist in a much exponential way than if you were just like in a very rooted, streamlined assembly line pipeline scenario.
Right. Well, I just have one or two final questions because we are running out of time. There's never enough time. Want to get a sense from your end, like, what do you most love about your job? Like, what do you most enjoy with what you do?
Just still enjoy making a pretty picture. We just wrapped up a show with a superhero character, and we had to do a digital replacement of the helmet, and yeah, the helmet wasn't anything particularly impressive. It was a shiny purple helmet, but I still like enjoyed the fact that like I got the reflections right. So it's weird. I get satisfaction of doing that sometimes. Yeah, so it's either that or like coming up with a great problem solve on the fly.
Awesome. Any final thoughts or final words of wisdom for our wonderful participants, for those who would like to, break into the industry or, entertain learning more about the industry?
Say that again? Sorry.
Or just like any final words of wisdom or thoughts for our wonderful participants as they look to explore the industry?
Know your art. Be brave on studying art that's not your art, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, Jimmy, it was such a pleasure to have you within this space and to share this conversation with you. You had a lot of words of wisdom and a lot of encouragement for our wonderful participants, and we hope to have you back in the near future.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. I hope all my answers were satisfactory. If not, I think Kat will bring on someone else who will do a better job.
You were fantastic, Jimmy. Thanks so much for being so candid. Yeah, it's now my pleasure to pass the baton, as I like to say, to the wonderful Steph for our closing ritual. Thanks
Thank
again.
you, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Kat and Jimmy. That was so great. I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed that conversation. So, and I know that everybody else did, because there were a lot of really thoughtful, insightful questions coming in. So we're now going to transition into our closing. We have all been a community for the last hour, and we learned about TAP programming. We learned about the animation pipeline. We created the story of a community. We learned about creative arts therapy, and we learned so much from Jimmy. So what's one thing that you would like to take away with you from this community to bring to your own? this is a question just think about, just to meditate on for a moment. One thing that you would like to take with you. You're welcome to share it in the Q&A feature, but you're also welcome just to think about it. For me, I'd like to take away the last thing that Jimmy said was about bravery, just to be brave with your art. I thought that was amazing, and be brave enough to explore other people's art too, and to take that in and appreciate it. That was awesome. I'm going to take that with me. Lyndon, what are you going to take with you? And Brandon, I'd like to hear.
For me, I think that I'm going to take all of the creativity from the group. That's what I'm gonna take.
Nice. How about you, Brandon?
I think I'm gonna take all those different words for what community means.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It was.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I see that some people have shared in the Q&A. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here with us. We have a little bit more information to share before you go, some resources. I'm going to pass it over to Lyndon.
Thank you so much, Steph. Again, thank you for coming. Have a great weekend, everyone. Please remember to stay connected through our social media so you don't miss any future opportunities. And check out our resources to learn more about what we shared today. Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for being here. We hope to continue to connect with you all on social media and in future groups.
Yes, until we meet again.
See everybody.